Are you ready for an adventure? Are you ready for a good long story? Remember what I said. Claire, Beecham, Randall, Fraser, nothing on Skye O'Malley. This woman has done more than Claire will ever do. And she lived, depending on which century you're talking about. If you're talking about James Fraser's period of 1700s, then Skye lived 200 years. If you're talking about World War II, where the books, Outlander books start, then you're talking almost 300 and 400 years before Claire was even born. Skye was conquering the world. And we've done her books, Skye O'Malley. And we've done All Sweet Tomorrow. I hope you tuned in for these. I did Skye in 2 parts, but the rest of them I just did in 1. Then Love for All Time. And this was 600 pages. And today's book is even longer. 700 pages. This Heart of Mine, Bertrice Small. And welcome to the D. Louise book series. My name is Christina, Kristina, and this is where we read books and talk about books. And it's nice. It's nice to meet you. And I hope that you like my video here. I'm trying really hard here. All I can do is try. Let's get to this amazing story. And if you could please like and subscribe. According to my analytics, you've already left. I haven't even, as of this recording, I haven't hit 200. I fear that I will never hit 200. I used to pray and hope for 500 or 1,000, and I've had to become a little more realistic because I haven't even hit 200 yet, and I've been doing this for well over a year now. So we'll see what happens. This is book 4 of the Skye O'Malley saga, and this is Velvet. Velvet is her and Adam's biological child. Adam is like her 6th or 7th husband. Skye had 7 or 8 children, and 7 are still living and profitable and well taken care of, all of Skye's machinations. And we get quite a few character updates. I'm a series person. I like series. I like the character compression, book to book to book. This book took a little extra time. I would estimate normally 2 to 3 hours for me is a long time for a book. I will tell you that this took me about 12 hours. 12 to 14 hours it took. 3 days. I read it over a 3-day period of time. So that's how I was really involved in it. I enjoyed the story. I love Skye because she's always surmounting her obstacles. And I love enjoying these stories with you. And I hope you are checking out Flashback Monday, Star Trek Friday, my If Then Fridays that follow Star Trek later in the afternoon. I'm really enjoying those series too. I hope you are also. Romantic Times Book Review Magazine. I'm telling you that it's as good then as it is today. I love that magazine. I'm sorry it's not in print anymore. It was an awesome magazine. They did over 250 reviews a month. No other magazine does it. Besides the fact that they were doing books that I would read. So this is book 4 in the series. We've got a few more that they get a little shorter. They get a little smaller and shorter as we go on. But this is Velvet's story. And it starts in 1586, 11 years after the Queen initially banned Skye from court. She sends for Skye. She needs Skye's help. So she always goes off doing videos, always. Christ bloody bones, the oath exploded like a thunderclap from Elizabeth Tudor's mouth. She stopped in mid-stride and whirling about fixed an angry stare upon the only other woman in the room. You dare say no to me, madam? I am your queen. I have no queen, came the reply. In fact, thanks to you, I have no country. Bitch, the queen hissed, you have ever been a thorn in my side. Did I not give you and your husband a home? Are your children not welcome at my court? Is that the gratitude you show me for all my kindnesses? She glowered at the men who attended her as if enlisting their support. Kindness? The other woman emanated a sharp bark of laughter. Let me think back, Majesty, over our long association. There was the time when you condoned Lord Dudley's rape of my person because you weren't woman enough to love him totally yourself. Then there was the time you forced me into a marriage promising to protect my infant son's lands, which then you gave away. And I seem to remember another time when, needing my help, you kidnapped my daughter to ensure my cooperation. And I remember you pirated my ships, costing English much-needed venues. I love her and the queen going back and forth and back and forth. And then we come to the heart of the matter. English Tudor looked at her longtime adversary and then said something that no one had ever thought to hear her say to her, this great rival of hers. I need your help, dearest Skye. No one else can do what I need done but you. The two men in the room glanced at one another, and one more surprised than the other. Skye looked to her husband, Adam de Moscow, and saw his gaze what she knew she would see. The queen had come as close to begging for her aid as she was ever going to. Adam's smoky blue eyes looked steadily into Skye's, and she would hear his silent voice as clear as if it were actually speaking to her. You cannot refuse her now, his eyes told her quietly. Give over, little girl. Be gracious in your victory. So it was explained that the Queen had sent William Hawkins, a London agent, jeweler, to the Indies in an expedition to start trading. And the Queen wanted Skye and Robert Small to go, but Skye says that, Robbie is getting too old. So then the Queen says, we'll send Velvet. And Skye's like, no. So they do some negotiating, and the Queen agrees to create the Earl of Lundy and agrees that Velvet will inherit it. She and Adam talk and decide to leave Velvet with Dame Cicely's care until they get back, or until she becomes of age to marry her betrothed Earl of BROC, Alexander Gordon. Now, they're going to go away for about 2 years. It ends up being longer than that. They run into complications, and we will get there. We start the book, just a second. We start the book in Scotland, and the Lord Angus Gordon, the Earl of BROC, tells his son that he must marry immediately because his health is poor and he wants to see his son married before he dies. So his father does die, and he heads to England to get Velvet. The prospective bride was not nearly so welcoming of her proposed future. To begin with, she could not even remember being a betrothed husband, since she was so young when the match was formally made, the contract signed, and the event celebrated. Staring at her beleaguered Uncle Con, her mother's youngest brother, she angrily shouted her frustration and the topsy-turvy muddle her complacent life had suddenly become when the messenger from BROC had arrived. Betrothed husband? What betrothed husband? I do not understand this. Uncle, I have no betrothed husband. And it was the event happened in this book that Velvet was 5 years old and they betrothed her to, I think the Earl was 15. He's at least 10 or plus years older than her. So she decides to, they try and talk to her. Khan tries to talk to her, and Velvet decides that she's going to have no part of it, and she's going to run away to London. So she goes to see her sister Blakely at Blackthorn Privy to help set up for the Queen's visit. The Queen's going to come and decided she's going to visit her goddaughter and have a meal. But, you know, when the Queen comes, everybody comes. So we get there, and I don't remember. See, this took me over hours. I was making my notes as I went along. Let's see. Lord Blackthorn could not rid himself of the feeling that his youngest sister-in-law had some shame in mind. But Velvet was not a liar, and if she said she would not discuss her marriage with the Queen, then he believed her. Nay, lass, I want you to stay. I simply don't want to find myself in the middle of a family argument. I don't want to endanger my position with your parents. You know that they worried at first I was not right for Deidre. Velvet felt a small twinge of guilt at his words. Her family had come to Queen's Malvern when she was barely 2 years of age. Deidre had been 8, and then John Blakely 28. His first wife was still living, and his life was misery. Maria Blakely was totally mad and had been since stillbirth of her child 10 months after her marriage. For the 8 years, she had been confined to her apartments where she raved and wept, but showed no signs of either recovering or dying. At first, Lord Blackthorn was drawn to Deidre because the child his first wife had miscarried was a girl, and would have been Deidre's age. Deidre's own life had been rather topsy-turvy one, and though it had finally settled, she had been fatherless for most of her life, suddenly discovered now that she had 2 fathers. Adam D. Marsker was a loving stepfather, but he was unable to conceal that Velvet, his only biological child, was the light of his life. Had John Blakely not been there for Deidre, her life would have been a sadder one. When his love turned from parental to passionate, and her love grew from a child's to a woman's, neither was ever sure. Maria Blakely escaped from her captivity and drowned herself in the estate at the Prairie, where Deidre was 13. A year and a day later, Blackthorn asked Deidre to be his wife and was joyously accepted by her. Deidre's mother and stepfather, however, were not pleased, and at first they refused. They felt John Blakely was far too old for Deidre. Lord Blackthorn pleaded desperately, for he was a man in love. Deidre pinned away as more suitable suitors were paraded before her, only to be weepingly rejected. In the end, the lovers' persistence won out, and they were married 4 months after the bride's 16th birthday. They married young in the 15th and 14th and 15th and 16th century. They married very young at 16. 20 was considered old by then. So then the Queen arrives, and Velvet tells the Queen it's her birthday, and the Queen gives her a ring, and then asks Velvet what else she would like, and the Queen doesn't know at the time. She's informed later. She doesn't know at this point, though, but the Velvet asked to be one of her lady maids. And Velvet is doing this so she can avoid the Earl when he comes. So she can go, oh, no, I can't marry you right now. I got to go serve the Queen. You see, she had a plan. So the Queen agrees to let her be a lady's maid. And the Queen introduces us to Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, the master of the Queen's horse, and also to Sir Walter Raleigh, Queen's captain of gentlemen pensioners. Deirdre is angry with Velvet for making the deal with the Queen because she knows why she made it. She knows why she made it. And then Deirdre tells Han what her sister did. Con St. Michael was, however, strangely unperturbed when he was told that evening of Velvet's tactics. She'll be safe with Bess. Bess is the Queen, Queen Elizabeth Tudor. He noted dryly, bless the little vixen for finding a way out of this herself. Why, Uncle, you sound as if you approve of Velvet's behavior, Deirdre replied, not a little shocked. Frankly, Deirdre lass, I didn't like the idea of giving our Velvet over to BROC in marriage without Skye and Adam here. Now, her parents have been gone for almost a year, maybe. They're supposedly at this juncture going to be away for another year, and it ends up being longer than that, but they don't know that as of this time. The Queen will only give up her new maid of honor to her parents, certainly not to a Scots earl, especially when the maid objecting. The matter settled in his mind, Lord Bliss escorted his wife and niece down to the great hall for the feasting. Elizabeth Tudor was just arriving as they hurried into the big room, which was lined with arch-shaped windows. The spring sunset turned the hall crimson, a brilliant hue echoed by the bright red flames in the 4 big fireplaces. They took the chill from the room. And Con is one of Bess's favorites. He was the handsomest man at court for several years before he married his wife, Aiden. And that's all in this one. So I hope you would check out that video. So then Dame Cicely learns about Velvet's plans. Dame Cicely came across with her mom. She is Sir Robert Small's sister, and she has been childless. And her brother Robert is the one that handles all of Skye's shipping, although he is getting quite elderly now and probably seeking retirement. So Velvet goes home and gets clothes and then returns to London with the Queen. Her brother, the Earl of Lymouth, Robin, as he's referred to in most of the book, one of the estates that his mother fought for with the Queen and won. His father died when he was young. So he comes on and he's part of the problem, or he helps Velvet, or tries to help Velvet, and he tries to help the Earl. The court left Black Privy early. Let me see the right page again. Blackthorn Prior and traveled south again toward London. The Spanish threat to the English security was said to be most serious this year, and it was rumored that a large fleet was being assembled to attack England. The Queen's counselors had insisted that she return to London, where she might be properly protected, so the summer progress came to an abrupt halt. The Earl of Lymouth, upon hearing that his royal guests would not be visiting Devon after all, raised a troop of men for her defense and came to London to entertain her in his beautiful home, Lymouth House, which was located on the Strand. Velvet, hearing that her brother had arrived in London, begged off time from her duties so that she might go see Robin. She was going to need all the allies she could get in the matter of her betrothal. She had no doubt that Dame Cicely and Deirdre were already written to him. Robert Southwood, the Earl of Lymouth, looked up, and the corners of his mouth turned up a smile. He was dressed casually, and his silk shirt opened to reveal a smooth expanse of chest. The youngest of his mother's children she was, next to his older sister Willow, his favorite. "Hello, you minx," he said, giving her a hug and a kiss. "Oh, Robin, not you too? Are you going to lecture me also? Why doesn't anyone understand my point of view?" So she tells him, they talk about the stuff. Okay, then Robert meets his old friend, Bing, 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 bing. 11. Wow. I don't remember if she's ever done 11 before. She usually stops at 10 or goes all the way to 12. But it's been a long time since she's done 11. So Robert, Jeffrey, they had gazillion names back then. What we call him Robin. But it was Robert Jeffrey James Henry Southwood, the Earl of Plymouth, had held this title since before his 3rd birthday. He had no real memory of his father, whom he so strangely resembled. By choice, he had gone to court at the age of 6 to be a personal page to Her Majesty the Queen, and he had taken to court life with ease. That was his birthright. When he was 16, his mother had sent him to study at Oxford University. When he was 18, he had been sent to the Sorbonne, and from there he had traveled throughout Europe. He was at the Sorbonne that he met Alexander Gordon, the heir to the Scottish earldom of BROC. Alex was 3 years older than the blonde English earl, but the two had taken to each other like long-lost brothers. They decided to pool their resources and share living quarters. Even that hadn't spoiled their friendship. They studied together, drank together, and even wenched together. Sometimes when their funds were low, they shared the same pretty whore who was far from being offended at being paid only once. Robin had explained to his friend that he had been betrothed since childhood to the daughter of a friend of the family, and when he had returned home, he would marry her. Alex admitted to a familiar situation, but explained that the last involved was a younger than he by 13 years, and the agreement between them did not allow him to wed her until she was 16. Still, he said he was in no hurry to settle down. Mistress Velvety Moscow could take her time growing up. And Robin's like, "Who did you say?" Robin suddenly sat up in bed where he was lying. "What is the name of your betrothed?" Velvety Moscow." "Good Lord, Velvety Moscow," Robin began to laugh. "Do you know her?" Alex, now looking curiously at his friend. "She's become part-marked or has her nose grown over long?" "I remember not, but that she was a pretty child." I know her. She's my sister." "Alex, my sister, and she's outrageously fair. That's why you've always looked so familiar to me. We originally met several years ago at your betrothal feast at my mother and stepfather at Queen's Malvern." So now it was 6 years later, and Robin had married his betrothed wife, Alancy Granville, and had sired 3 daughters from her before she died. She died after the birth of her 3rd daughter. So we get catch up, and he meets with Robin, and Robin suggests, and this is the crux of the story here, that we introduce him as Alex Gordon to Velvet, because Velvet was 5 years old. She has no memory of him. So we introduce you as Alex Gordon, not as the Earl of BROC, you see. So that, oh, my back is killing me. So that, sorry about that. So that she won't know who she is, and he'll be able to get to know her as Alexander Gordon and not the Earl, and that Velvet will befriend him. And she also meets Kit Marlowe and William Shakespeare are in these. She also meets the elderly creep. You'll understand if you've read the previous books, Dudley. And then later, Velvet and Gordon get friendly and share a simple kiss. And it's her first kiss. But she doesn't know that she's kissing her betrothed. She just thinks she's kissing Alexander Gordon. So Walter Riley is in the Queen's, confidant, her advisor. And he knows that Velvet is betrothed, and he talks to the Queen. And he lets her know what's going on. Raleigh slipped easily into the circle about the Queen, working his way cautiously through the press until he was next to her. The Queen was listening to a rather clever story being told by one of her favorite young men, Anthony Bacon. But as always, she saw everything that went on about her. Quietly, she slipped her arm through Raleigh's and gave him a smile without ever turning her attention from young Bacon. "I need a moment in private," he said softly in her ear, and she nodded her assent. When the storyteller had done with his tale, which was greeted with pleased laughter, the Queen began to move off through the garden, still holding Raleigh's arm. Behind her the gentleman followed until she turned and said coquettily, "Keep your distance, sir, for I wish to be alone with my Walter." "Thank you, madame. What is it you beg of me this time? I often ask myself if you will ever stop being the beggar," the Queen says. "I shall stop being a beggar when you stop being so generous, madame." Naylors, what I have to tell you is a love story in which your majesty would play an important role toward arranging a happily ever after ending for the lovers involved. Then Raleigh explained the situation between Velvet and the Earl of BROC, being careful to ensure that the Queen did not suspect that Velvet had begged for a position as a maid of honor only to escape Alex, which she did. As he spoke, Elizabeth Tudor's face softened. She had grown extremely fond of Velvet in the few weeks she had known her. The child was bright, amusing, and generally lovable without being one of those sickly sweet misses who annoyed her. The Queen could understand Velvet's fright at being told that a stranger was coming to wed and carry her off, especially with her beloved parents half a world away. She was young and eager for the joy of living, and she would have some pleasures before settling to become a man's charge for the rest of her life. So the Queen agrees to, and not to let on that she knows. So, but she also says that she will do Velvet a favor and not release Velvet until her parents arrive. "I think that my godchild will be fortunate in her husband," said Elizabeth quietly. "Very well, sire. You may court the maid with my permission, and I will not reveal your secret to anyone. I see the wisdom in the plan devised by you and Robert Southward. In the short time I have known Velvet, I have learned that she is indeed stubborn. It is better that she come to know Alexander Gordon for himself, and not resist him merely because he is BROC. I will, however, give Velvet one small advantage. I will not release her from my service until Lord and Lady de Moscow return. The latest news has them arriving sometime in autumn. I think you might wait until then to claim and to bed your bride." And he's like, "Okay, I agree." So then Velvet's been hanging out with two of the Queen's ladies' maids. Now that she's a ladies' maid, she's been hanging out with these ladies' maids. And one of the ladies' maids was Angel Christman. He met her at one of the parties, and he falls head over heels in love with the girl. So he wants to know who she is. So she asks the Queen's Chancellor was very surprised the morning after the Earl of Lumsford to receive a message from the gentleman regarding the background of one Mistress Angel Christman, a royal ward. Lincoln was facing the most serious threat of invasion since the Normans. Everything Elizabeth Tudor, everything for England stood for was in mortal danger, and Lord Southward wanted to learn about a chit of a girl. Those hedonistic couriers thought Hudson, and then he remembered who the request came from and reassessed the situation. Robert Southward was a serious young man who had been deeply and genuinely grieved by his wife's death. There was a royal ward with some quality to attract his nobleman was interesting in itself. Lord Hudson looked into the matter and was disappointed by what he found. Angel Christmas, aged 17, had been a royal ward since the age of 5. She was the granddaughter of 2 minor barons from the northwest counties and a child of a younger son and daughter. She had been left in the Queen's charge by her father, who was murdered her mother after finding the lady in another gentleman's bed. The girl had no fortune, no influential relations to aid her, and therefore no prospects. One thing Lord Hudson did learn was that Miss Christmas was radiantly beautiful, which might possibly stand in her good stead if she were clever as well. So far she had not given evidence of such quality, and there was absolutely no gossip connecting her with any gentleman. Her two closest friends was Bess Throckmorton and Velvet. So he informs Robin of this situation, and then Robin sees her. Well, the Spanish, they have the battle with the Spanish, and while this is going on, Robin sees Angel, and she thinks he's lost his rocker. Um, uh, uh, where did she say? While they continued on down the riverbank, a far more intense scene was enacted in a secluded part of the inn garden. Robert Southwood had waited for the instant he had laid eyes upon Angel Christman to be alone with her like this. His gentle manner was deceptive, for like his father before him, he took what he wanted. Without any preamble, he declared himself, I love you. I love you from the first moment I saw you. Angel stopped, and shocked by his words, she had not believed that Velvet's brother was the kind of gentleman who would make mockery of a poor girl. She was confused, and for that minute unsure of what to say to him. Then, realizing that to play that simpleton would only encourage his cruelty, she said briskly, You make fun of me, my lord, and this is unkind of you. Your sister loves you dearly, and she is the best friend I ever had. Would you endanger the one thing I prize most, Velvet's friendship? For shame, my lord. But I do not mock you, he cried. I love you, Angel. Then you are a fool, my lord, for you do not even know me. She snapped, her patience gone. I may be poor and unimportant, she thought to herself, but how dare he tease me in this fashion? Your father was Whit Christman, the son of Sir Radar. Your mother, whom you favorably strong, was Joanne Wallace. Your family seat is in Longridge in Lancaster. Your parents died when you were 5, and although your parental grandparents would have taken you in, your father left your wardship to the crown. You'll be 18 on your next birthday, which is December 5th. How do you know all this? Angel demanded. I asked Lord Hudson. Why? I have told you why. I love you, dear, and how fair she is, Robin thought. My father killed my mother, who was unfaithful to him, and then took his own life, she said bluntly. Unfortunate, but those things happen, even in the best of families. My mother and Velvet's was a Moroccan harem once. That doesn't happen in the best of families, Angel answered quickly, and a smile tugged at the corners of his lush mouth. You are teasing me, aren't you, trying to make me feel better? No, 'tis true. What do you want of me, my lord? She queried him, still confused as to his motives. In her heart she knew she was going to suggest something she could not countenance, and would offend him by refusing. How angry would he become? Would he be forbid her to remain with his sister? Oh Lord, he was so handsome. I want you to be my wife, Robin says. My lord, that is cruel, she cried. I look up at me, sweet angel. I love you, dearest heart. You can't love me. Knowing facts about me is not really knowing. Besides, you're the Earl of Plymouth, one of England's most powerful and wealthy men. I am nothing in light of your family. What is the daughter of an unimpoverished second son of an unimportant baron to the Southwood family? Um, I am Southwood, Angel. There is no one to tell me yea or nay. I am my own master. You should marry a lady of quality, wealth, and family, my lord. Even I know that. I should marry the girl I love, he answered, and my beautiful angel, I love you life beyond life itself. Marry me, my darling. Make me the happiest of men. So she decides to say yes, and the queen gets involved, and she actually marries him that night. And then we have some word from the Spanish Armada. And they get married and they have their wedding night and all that kind of stuff. And he tells Angel about his mother. Velvet tells Velvet chuckled. She is the most marvelous woman alive, Angel, and she will love you as Robin and I do. I don't doubt everything you've heard is contradictory. Mama is so fabulous. There is no other woman like her in the world. My father is her sixth husband, although he is her husband Adam is her husband for the longest period of time, and he will remain her husband for the rest of her life. For many years, she was head of her family in Ireland, and she took care of them all, along with Sir Robert Small, who has been my mother's partner for many years. She built up a huge trading empire. O'Malley ships have been bringing spices to England for years. Although now the Portuguese have a stronghold in the Indies, is much harder. There was one reason my mother undertook this voyage. She wanted to obtain for England the same privileges that the Grand Mughal has given to Portuguese. Still, despite her many activities, none of her children has ever been slighted or felt unloved, and we are all close. And she tells her, we have two O'Flaherty half-brothers, Ewan and Murrow. Then comes our half-sister Willow, the Countess of Alcester. Then there are Burke, half-brother and sister Deirdre and Patrick, and our father has been married to Mama longer than any other. Adam has been married to Skye longer than any other husband, and like I said, will be. And she also tells Angel about Robin's three girls. Beth has just turned 3 this year, Kate was 2, and little Cicely will be 2 in December. And they're young enough that they probably won't remember their mother, and they will get to know Angel as their mother. So then they get a letter from, I think that's what I wrote here. She learns that who Gordon is. Alex strode across the room and gathered the weeping girl in his arms. Looking over her head at Robin, he said in an even voice, enough of this charade, Robin. I will not have Velvet terrorized any further, sweetheart. Look at me. I am the Earl of BROC, your betrothed husband, and I love you. Please don't be frightened any longer, I beg you. He kissed the top of her head, making soothing noises at her. Of course I knew, you knew of this, Robin. You knew who he was. Of course I knew. He was an old friend. You lied to me, she shouted at him. Both of you lied to me. What lie? Demanded Robin. No one lied to you. You said he was Alexander Lord Gordon, she said angrily, stamped her foot, and her midnight blue skirt shook with the furious hiss of silk. He is, you little Viago. He is Alexander Gordon, the Earl of BROC. There was no lie told to you, but not the full truth either. Oh, I will never forgive you, neither of you. And she goes off on the two of them. Velvet stays mad at him for both of them for weeks. Then Alex makes a fatal mistake and tries to make her jealous. And then we discover Robert Dudley has passed away, and Dudley's wife remarries. That will come back to haunt people later on. Alex decided that he has had enough, and he takes Velvet, and they go to Scotland. And they go to Scotland, and they stay with the Earl of Bothwell, Francis Stewart Hepburn, and his brother Hercules. And Velvet agrees that she will marry Gordon, but not until her parents arrive. And because she said all this in front of people, and she said it in Scotland's lands. You remember Fraser peeps? They're handfasted now. So she's kind of pissed off, but she still wants to wait until her parents. Where's the next? The big book. Oh, there it is. I saw it. Dum dum dum. You gotta. Velvet is just as strong. Becomes just as strong as a mother, although she's a little more stubborn. But Skye is just the absolute best. She is courageous. She's a fighter. She's an awesome. And Claire Beecham, Randall Fraser can't hold a candle to Skye O'Malley. I wish HBO or Cinemax or one of those would do these books. They could spend years on these books. They're amazing. James Stewart, the sixth of his name and King of Scotland, glared at his cousin, the Earl of Brockharn. You're saying you've got to take her back to England, Alex. What in hell possessed you anyway? I did not have to take her back, Jamie. We're married. The king's face grew molten with his anger. They were always arguing with him, these nobles of his. He made no difference that, thanks to his grandfather, he was related to half of Scotland. Even blood ties made no difference here. Scotland's nobility were headstrong and determined to defy their rulers. Damn it, Alex, don't you realize the seriousness of what you've done? You've kidnapped one of Elizabeth Tudor's maids of honor. Her entire family is in uproar and are demanding her return. More important, my cousin is demanding that you bring her back. Since when have Scotland rulers obeyed England's orders? Mocked the Earl of Brockharn. Scotland will one day inherit England, Alex, and I would be welcomed by the English when that day comes. I look to my future. I have no desire to engage England in even a small war, particularly over a wench, however pretty. With a small smile towards Velvet. I am only too happy to obey the Queen's order, Your Majesty, and return home. And she's all happy about it. Nay, sire, Christ's bones. The oath exploded forcefully from Alex's mouth. Ye wed me well and true, Valis. She's wed me twice, once by handfast admission and the second by the parson of Newkirk. I most certainly don't accept your handfast marriage, and since we are both members of the Holy Catholic Church, I do not accept a ceremony performed by the preacher of Calvinist faith. Yes, ma'am. What? So, they spend a few days with the king, and she gets to know him, and she enjoys hanging out with him. And then they head back to England. Greetings, my lord, Bothwell called as they came abreast of the English party. Technically, they were now over the border, but Sherrod's national boundaries were extremely fluid. I am Francis Stewart Hepburn, His Majesty's most loyal cousin. Which one of ye is the Earl of Lymouth? I am my Lord Bothwell. I am Robert Southard, Mr. DeMarco's brother. The young man reminded him of the angels he had seen portrayed in the stained glass windows of French cathedrals. He was absolutely gorgeous, and yet Francis noted the hard line of the English mouth and his weary lime-green eyes. Then to see I am instructed to turn over Lord and Lady Gordon, for I am bound to tell you that your sister and Lord Gordon were legally wed at my own castle of Hermitage. His Majesty King James expects to see the Earl and Countess of Braun return safely within a reasonable time. And everybody agrees to everything, and it goes out the window. Robin is just massively pissed. Massively pissed. And they return to Queen's Malvern, where, again, the local priest marries them again. And then we get some news. Late autumn of 1588 was an incredible social whirl for those who followed the court of Elizabeth Tudor. Capping the season on November 17th, the Queen left Somerset House in a state of procession for St. Paul's. The great parade was headed by palace officials, followed by London's aldermen and judges, all done up in their finest clothes. Next came the Lancaster, York, Somerset, and Richmond heralds, introducing the Duke, Marquis, Earls, and Viscounts. It was among these Lord Southwold and his brother-in-law, the Earl of BROC, mingled. Then came the Lord Treasurer of England, William Cecil, Lord Burleigh, in his fur-trimmed black velvet gown, heavy gold of office of his neck. With him was the splendid Chancellor of England, Sir Christopher Hatton, resplendent in his black velvet with gold lace, his own badge of office shining in the November light. These two worthies were followed by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of York, the French ambassador, the Lord Mayor of London, and the noblemen chosen to carry the sword of state. And they're there for the wedding. Again, another wedding of BROC. And then we have some news. On the following day, November 18th, 1588, Velvet and Alex were married one last time in the same chapel at Greenwich where Skye had married Geoffrey Southwold. When the Queen had learned during the tournament at Whitehall that the gown the bride would wear was the same one in which Skye had wed the Angel Earl, nothing would do but that ceremony be in the same place. This necessitated a quick move by the entire court downriver to Greenwich, which the Queen's favourite place. There at 4:30 in the afternoon, Velvet and Alex stood before John Wycliffe, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and were married again for the fourth time. And not the last time. They will keep married. So then Alex Murrow arrives. And Murrow has some news. Murrow was the second of Skye O'Malley's children, and perhaps the one most like her. For as much as he loved his wife and children, he also loved a good adventure. He had spent his early years in Ireland and later followed Tudor court, where he had been given a page to Geraldine Fitzgerald Clinton, the Countess of Lincoln. Growing bored with it and realizing that with no land of his own or title he could not go very far at court, he had asked his mother to send him to Oxford, where he studied diligently, both there and later at the university in Paris, where his father had studied. No one had been more surprised than Skye when Murrow announced his intentions of going to sea. Taken in hand by his mother's best captains, he had shown a true O'Malley talent for the sea. By the time Murrow reached the age of 25, he had his own ship and one of Skye and Robert's most trusted captains. Of all of them, he's the only true O'Malley you spawned, O'Shawn Maguire, Skye's senior captain, had observed to her. Murrow had been one of the 8 vessels accompanying Skye and Adam to the Indies. Now suddenly he was back sailing not into his home port of Plymouth, but the Thames into the Pool of London itself. By chance, one of the Earl Limmer's retainers was on the dock seeking a ship with oranges, for Angel craved them desperately. Recognizing the Seahawk and her master, the Earl spoke to Murrow. "Welcome home, Captain. The Earl is in London at his house along the Lord and Lady of Alchester. The Lady Velvet and her bridegroom, the Scotsman. Shall I tell my lord you'll be coming?" Brian's brain only registered that Robin and 2 of his sisters were here. "Do you have a horse, man?" he demanded of the servant. "Aye, over there." And he takes the horse and he goes. Only when he was on his way did the words spoken by his brother's servant penetrate his mind. The Lady Velvet and her bridegroom, the Scotsman. Velvet married? When had that happened, and what would her parents say when they learned about it? He hurried the horse along the road. It was early, and fortunate there were few people out and about, as it was a raw and chilly day. Plymouth House finally came into view, and he barely acknowledged the greeting of the gatekeeper as he galloped his mount through and up the driveway. "Welcome home, Captain," the majordomo said. "His lordship is not up yet, and I shall inform him that you are here." "Don't bother," came Murrow's quick reply. "I know my way to Robin's apartments." But What he doesn't know is that Robin has married since the last time he saw him. He married Angel, remember? But Captain O'Flaherty, Robin's valet, bowed briefly as Morrow came through the door of the Earl's apartment. "Welcome home, sir." "Thank you, Cap. Is his lordship still abed?" "Aye, sir. 'Twas rather a late night." Morrow only chuckled. He put his hand on his bed door chamber. Kip looked uncomfortable. "His lordship isn't alone." A smile split Morrow's face. "I would hope not, Kip." He flung open the door, and striding in, he called out loudly, "Robin, you slug-a-bed, up with you now, and let's have a look at the lass you spent the night debauching." Walking over to the bed, Morrow yanked back the covers. With a roar, the Earl of Plymouth leaped from his bed. Angel shrieked loudly and sought to cover herself. Morrow's startled gaze took in her condition, the blonde beauty, and the wedding ring on her finger. Then his brother hit him. "Ouch!" grunted Morrow, dropping his jaw. "Is that a way to greet me, you young pup?" "Morrow, is that you? Jesus, man, you gave us a start." "Did you think it was her husband, then?" Morrow chortled. "I am her husband, you randy old sea-dog." The Earl laughed. "You've been away too long, big brother. I was wed last August by the Queen's own chaplain, in Her Majesty's presence. This is my wife, Angel." Murray O'Flaherty had the decency to look abashed, and he accidentally blushed. "Madam, I do beg your pardon." Angel's face was serious. "I do not know if I shall ever forgive you, sir." But her eyes were dancing with merriment, and unable to restrain herself, she giggled mischievously, which turned Morrow's woe-begone expression back to a merry one. "Oh, brother, I can see I shall have to get you aside so that you may tell me all about my husband's bachelor's adventures. Welcome home, Morrow O'Flaherty. Your sisters have told me much about you, but I can see they don't know the half of it." Morrow laughed. "Nay, madame, they don't. Nor my good wife either. When is the babe due? For I can see my little brother has done his duty well by you." "In May," she replied, and Morrow raised his eyebrows. "You didn't wait, did you, Rob?" "For what?" Robin's laugh came in reply, and then Earl's seriousness. "Morrow, what are you doing home? Are mother and Adam with you?" "Nay, Rob, and that is why I sought you out first when I learned you were in London. I had originally planned to go to the Queen, but now I think it's better we make our own plans before speaking with Her Majesty. Mother and Adam are being held captive by the Portuguese Viceroy in Bombay. The only reason they aren't dead is that they can pay a fat ransom to the Portuguese, and Mother can make a huge fuss as well about the fact that she and Adam are members of the Holy Mother Church. She made it sound like our Uncle Michael O'Malley is about to be elected next Pope. The Viceroy is surrounded by Jesuits, and the Jesuits are far too clever and political to offend a high churchman. Besides, they'll get a goodly share of the ransom for the missionary work in India. Can the Viceroy be trusted to release Mother and Adam unharmed once we pay the ransom?" Robin asked. "From what I can see of the Viceroy, he's a snake of the lowest order, but the Jesuits are honest enough as long as the ransom is paid. Mother's piety is quite something to behold, Robin. I never knew she possessed a rosary, and yet is most visible on her person in Bombay, and she never misses an opportunity to finger it publicly. The Viceroy's chaplain is enchanted and fascinated both her and her beauty." So they got to tell the rest of the world, and he tells the Queen, and the Queen gives all her permission, and then the Queen decides that she's going to give. Now, even though Skye and Adam live at Queen's Malvern, apparently the Queen decides that it's in her power to give Queen's Malvern to Velvet. Since she's not a man, she can't inherit the rights. Let's see. So he informs the Queen. Oh, there we go. I had the wrong page. And then tomorrow is the start of pentennial season, and shortly thereafter my dearest godchild Velvet will depart with her husband for their home in Scotland. Since it is to be hoped that my goddaughter, once in her new home, will do her duty by her husband, it is not likely that we will see them for several years. Dunbrook is many long miles from London. Queen's Malvern, where Velvet grew up, was a grant from my own estates to Adam de Marsco. Since he has no son to carry on the line, we would have it known upon his death that the estate of Queen's Malvern is to be deeded to Alexander Gordon, the Earl of BROC, CAIRN, and his heirs forever. And that's her gift to them. So then another man tries to make his advances to Velvet I forgot. I did this wrong. Another woman tries to make her advances to Alexander, and he refuses her advances. So she rips her dress and screams and yells and says that Alex tried to rape her. And everybody believes that she's lying her ass off. But to save face, Alex is talked into a duel. And then Patrick comes back to my page here. Comes back after the duel and announces that Alex is dead. And Velvet just loses her effing mind. And because she's decided that she doesn't want to bury her husband here, he deserves to be buried in Scotland, but she doesn't want to do it. His men can take him home, and she flees with Murrow to go to rescue her parents. It is only after she leaves. She didn't even take time. She didn't even take time to, spend a couple days to get ready. They departed almost immediately, and because they departed almost immediately, she didn't learn till later, or doesn't learn for several years, that Alex was only injured. He wasn't killed. And he gets taken to Lady Elena's house, and she nurses him back to health, and she becomes his mistress. And this leads to further difficulties later down the road. So things go wrong with Murrow and Velvet on their trip, and she gets kidnapped by the Portuguese, and the Portuguese sell her. So let's get there. It's just and she ends up in India. It was a hot afternoon. Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, Emperor of the Mughal Empire, sat upon his throne conducting his country's business. He was feeling bored and irritable. The air in the audience chamber of the dear one was heavy with humidity, and from the rumblings outside the building another storm was due soon. And now, Most High, a final Adam Ramesh, the Kamisami of his household. Today there is a newly arrived train of gifts from the Portuguese governor in Bombay. They were routed to your capital in Lahore, but learning that you were visiting here in Fateh, they came directly to you. Akbar raised his expression, fine eyes heavenward. Let me guess. Several just passable horses, a few second-rate elephants, at least one brethren of moths and hunting cats, and another painting of some Christian saint or martyr, and a pouch of inferior gemstones. Why do the Portuguese insist on sending me bad fighting elephants and worse gemstones, Ramesh? They have absolutely no taste in either. Am I right, old man? You are correct, Most High, but this time the Portuguese have added 2 additional gifts. One should please you, but the other, he shrugged. There is more. Akbar was surprised. Well, Ramesh, what have the Portuguese added to their caravan of delights this time to please and amuse this barbarian king? What will please you, Most High, is a jeweled clock that chimes the hour, and The Portuguese have sent you a woman, Most High. A woman? The emperor was astounded. Do the Portuguese think my zenith is not full enough? Then he grew curious. What kind of woman? I think she is European, Most High. She is certainly not of our land or our Cathay. What frets you about her, Ramesh? I believe that the Portuguese meant to please you, but this woman is, I'm absolutely convinced, stark raving mad. I question that she has not been sent here to assassinate your majesty, and I fear for your safety. So they discover that she speaks French. So because, you find yourself in a country and nobody speaks your language, I have mentioned it previously in other, with other books and with the sign language. I think sign language is the universal language that everybody in the entire world speaks. The spelling may be different, but the signs are the same universally. Whereas if you go into Germany, we are spoiled as Americans because every other country in the world speaks English. There are people they are required to learn English as a second language. So every other country in the world speaks at least 2 languages, and we only speak 1. And the people that come here, the immigrants, they all learn English too. And for the record here, the only Native Americans are the Native Americans. Everybody else is immigrants. This country was formed by immigrants from other countries. So get that one. But so they finally learned that she speaks French. Yes, my lord, Queen Elizabeth yet reigns and will continue to do so, God willing. The Queen is my godmother, my lord. The expedition you speak of was that of Master John Newberry and Master William Hawkins. They and their assistants, a jeweler named Leeds, and James Sturry, a painter, along with a friend of my mother's, a London merchant named Ralph Fetch, left England when I was 12. Nothing was heard of them after they landed in Goa in England and was thought they had died. And this is the original story we started the book off with the Queen asking Skye to do this mission for her because the first one had failed. 3 of them reached my court a few years ago at just this time. The artist had married a half-caste girl and remained in Goa. But the others I knew. The jeweler I took into my service, and he served me well until he died of fever. The other 2 departed Fatura to return to their homeland. I never heard from them. They had not returned to England when I left several months ago. It was unusual that 3 Englishmen reached my court at all. Tell me how it is you find yourself here. And she tells him that before he left Bombay, the caravan mister wished to travel quickly before the rain set in. I was made to walk, and my only shelter was beneath a cart at night. 2 weeks ago, my tiring woman became ill, and they wanted to leave her behind. I did not speak Portuguese, and I do not speak your language, and I conveyed to the leader of the caravan my distress at being separated from Pansy. I screamed and cried and clung to her, all the while shaking my head and saying no. Finally, I offered the caravan master my jeweled mirror as a bribe. They put her in one of the carts. I have been nursing her ever since. She is very sick, my lord. And she gets a doctor, and the doctor determines that Pansy is with child. Pansy is her tiring woman, just like Daisy is Skye's tiring woman, and Daisy is Pansy's mom. So he makes Velvet his latest wife, and some of the sons aren't happy with it, but usually sometimes that becomes a bigger story, but it's not in this particular case. So I was trying to take all those notes, but I can skip most of them because they're not they were important in Skye's story, and they were important in the CAIRN. That's another good book you should read. Leslie, the CAIRN, Kadin, her book. That's one of the first books that Bertrice ever wrote. So he wants to get to know her. Akbar falls in love with Velvet, and they give her he talks to his other wives, and they give her pillow book. That is the Kuma Sutra, which is an adult how-to novel for the bedroom. If you ever want to get that book, and they sell it in some places. I've seen it. Pansy gives birth to a boy, Dougal, and then Murray O'Flaherty finally returns home. And when they had gotten back to uh, India, they discovered that Adam and Skye had escaped on their own, and they didn't need to give them the ransom, but then they ended up giving them the ransom for Velvet. But what has happened, Merrill? Tell me this instant. Tell us both, came Adam D. Marscombe. Where is my daughter Melva? Where is Velvet? Merrill took a deep breath. 'Twas best he knew to get the worst over with. There would be time later for full explanation. Velvet is at the court of the Grand Mughal Akbar, in his harem to be precise. Daisy gave a little shriek of dismay even as her mistress cried out, "Oh, dear God!" Skye's eyes closed and she swayed where she stood as 1,000 memories came floating back to her. She too was a strong woman, however too faint, and Adam's arms around her steadied her enough to open her eyes. She could feel him trembling against her, and immediately her total concern was for her husband. "I'm sure 'tis not as bad as Murrow has made it sound, my darling, but none the less I need to sit down. When we reached Bombay in good time, mother, I had delayed a moment in gathering the ransom and returning with it. Jesuit was with us. He attempted to elicit the gold from me, but I reminded him that our bargain had been that you and Adam would be waiting for us on the dock so that we might be certain that you were both safe. He was finally forced to admit that you had escaped. He had demanded the gold nevertheless, and I told him that I had nothing to pay for. Naturally, Father Arik was not particularly pleased. He had become well prepared, mother, with a godly troop of soldiers who lay hidden on the docks. The Jesuit took Velvet and Pansy from the ship to the residence of the Portuguese governor, agreeing to return them when we delivered your ransom. I had no reason to believe that he would not keep his promise. He didn't keep his promise. By the time Morrow went out to the ships to get the ships to bring them in with the real gold on it, the Portuguese mayor had sold Pansy and Velvet, as we learned earlier. So then we have a little chit with Patrick, because Patrick, he admits that he made an error. Your sister is this moment the prisoner of India's Grand Mughal, Lord Murrah. She is locked away in his harem, and we've precious little chance of ever seeing her again. What would you call that, all right? He pushed his younger brother from him disgustedly. Jizu, you just like your father, Niall. You're charming, but totally heedless of your own selfish actions. You didn't even stay long enough to tell Alex what really happened, did you? You ran back to Clearfields and hid away. Why didn't you own up to your own error and give him the anxiety? I would kill you with my own 2 hands. Patrick Burke, sprawled on the floor, looked up apprehensively at his elder sibling. Murrah was totally right. He knew it. How could I tell Alex what a fool I'd been running back to Velvet to announce his death, when if I had waited a few minutes more I would have learned he was merely wounded? My death, Alex said. You told Alex Velvet I was dead. You sneaky little coward, snarled Murrow. I am to understand that Patrick told you and Velvet that Lord Gordon had been killed. Why would he do such a thing? He looked at Alex. What do you know of this, my lord? 'Twas a duel, and he explains about the duel and what happened there. So then Skye, the one to make plans, makes plans, and she makes a plan to go rescue. She's The situation did not sound too discouraging. Praise from the Jesuits was not given lightly. They were a young order, having only been founded 56 years ago, but already they were wealthy and powerful. The motto of the order was Ad Majorem Dei, to the greater glory of God, when their primary object was to spread the faith of the Church. Working with the Jesuits is just might be possible to regain Velvet's freedom. She turned to her tiring woman. Daisy, find Bran and tell him I want him to go to Ireland and fetch my brother Michael. What can Michael do? Adam demanded. As Bishop of Mid-Connaught, Michael will go to the Jesuits in Paris, where an old friend of his is high in the order. We need to gain their cooperation in the rescue of our child. After all, my darling, 'twas not a Jesuit who demanded the outrageous ransom from us, a ransom that was paid. Was it not a Jesuit who placed our child in the care of a dreadful man who sent her, a good and loyal daughter of the Church, to an infidel lord of immoral purposes? Adam, my darling, if the Jesuits hadn't meddled, then our child would be safe today. The way I see it is the Jesuits owe us for this terrible travesty. We shall, of course, show our gratitude further once Velvet is returned to us, but they must first use their influence to get Michael on the Grand Mughal, and once he is there, they must aid him in convincing Akbar to release Velvet into her uncle's care. And it may or may not work. So then Skye knows that Alex took a mistress. She's not happy with it. She tells him to go back to Scotland to take care of his castle and get it ready for when Velvet returns. And she's hoping by doing this that Gordon will leave Elena here, his mistress, and go to Scotland. Unknowns to Skye, she learns later that he takes the mistress with him, which is going to lead to some further undoing. So then we get to Michael O'Malley. He is Skye's brother. And Bran Kelly rode without rest from London to Bideford, where he took command of one of the ships of the O'Malley fleet to sail across the Irish Sea around Cape Fear. As luck would have it, the bishop was visiting his stepmother at his ancestral home. Learning of his niece's fate and that of Bran Kelly's daughter, Michael O'Malley packed at once, and 2 weeks after he left London, Bran Kelly, and returned to Skye O'Malley's younger brother. The Bishop of Mid-Connaught, once a tall, thin youth with pinned cheeks and earnest air about him, had grown into a bluff, hearty man with twinkling eyes, his dark hair very closely cropped as befitted a churchman. His sister had 15 years earlier passed on her title, the O'Malley, to him despite his clerical standing. It always amused Michael that he had ended up with the responsibility that had actually been rightfully his all along. His father had died when he was just a small boy, and knowing Michael's desire to be a priest, had passed over the favor, and he gave it to Skye, but then Skye gave it back to him later. But Skye did a really good job, as you can tell from the other books. Skye is very, very good at her job. So they tell him what he needs to do. So he goes we get some more of Akbar, and I'm just going to leave that out because, again, I thought it was going to be important to the story, but it turns out it's not. So in this time, Michael goes to see his friend O'Dowd to tell his O'Dowd, what brings a Irish bishop to Paris, Michaeline? The Jesuit's curiosity was aroused. 'Twas a family matter, came Michael's calm reply, and 'twas thought that since your aunt is an O'Malley and you're therefore part of the family that you'd like to aid us. If I can, he said. Ah, you can. Well, out with it, unless you're planning to keep me here all night. You remember my sister Skye, Michael began. And who could forget that beautiful creature? Has she outlived another husband, Michaeline, or is she still wed to that big man, DeMarsco? And he says, she's still married to Adam, and it's been 18 years. So what's the problem? I best begin at the beginning. Several years ago, my sister and her husband departed England for voyage to East Indies. As you'll remember, Skye and her partner, Robert Small, had a profitable relationship for many, many years with a number of island sultans. Their ship was damaged in a storm, blown off course. They had taken up Becamp off of Bombay and were taken in tow by the Portuguese. BROC nodded, all the while thinking to himself that Skye O'Malley's destination had probably been India all along. The Portuguese governor took my sister, her husband, and their ship crew hostage, forcing my nephew, Captain Merle, to return to England to get the gold to free them, and the Queen's permission. And then he says, the O'Malleys were holding the Jesuits responsible for the kidnap of one of their own. Here's a fine kettle of fish. In their own small way, the O'Malleys of Emphysema, through a minor branch of the Garstang family, had certainly amount of influence and a great deal of money. Bert's nimble mind scrambled to remember what he could of Velvet de Mosco. Her father was an important family, but de Mosco's stepfather, the Comte de Cher, was highly thought of by the French royal family, and despite the fact that there were currently a civil war raging in France over the succession, royal connections were not to be sneezed at. So he tells him about Velvet, and they go to rescue Velvet. In the meantime, Velvet, believing that her husband's been dead all this time, allows herself to establish a relationship with Akbar and gives birth to a daughter. And I'm almost um, positive. So she's book 6, Yasmin, I think. But the next book is Love Lost Found. But so she falls in love with Akbar and delivers his child and is living a really happy life. And when Michael shows up, um, let me get a little further. So they sail, and at first, where is it? I'm a little ahead of myself here. So they actually make it into see Akbar. They go see Velvet. It is she said to Akbar, the girl with the auburn hair. He thought he heard a sound, almost the groan of an animal in pain. When he turned to the Emperor, Akbar's face was an impassive one. Still he could not help but ask, are you all right, my lord? You have just told me that my favorite wife, the mother of my daughter, is another man's wife, priest. Were I not mortal, were I not a man of strict conscience, I would kill you here in this secret corridor where we now stand. Michael felt an icy chill run over him, for he saw the mixture of despair and anger that had suddenly appeared in the Emperor's eyes. My lord, this is a tragedy, I will grant you, but what can I do? I am a man of morals and strict conscience. Akbar said, give me time to make arrangements, priest, and then I will have you brought to me again, and we will settle this matter. So then Michael was not taken into the main buildings of the palace. Instead, he was brought secretly through the gardens to a smaller building where Akbar awaited him. This is Kandra's house. Kandra is the name by which my niece is known here. It comes from the ancient Sanskrit language and means moonlight. I have told her that I only wish her to meet a visiting Christian priest. I have arranged for you to leave Labord at dawn. You will travel to the coast under my own personal protection as quickly as possible. You said there was a child, Michael began. Our daughter Yasmin Kama begun. I am not sure about taking the baby, my lord. I do not know how Velvet's husband would take the news of another man's child. Do you think I would expose my daughter to European bigotry? Thundered Akbar. Never. My child will remain here. How will we convince my niece to such a plan? Michael was worried. We will convince her, priest, you and I. Come now, Kandra waits. Seeing her up close, Michael was more astounded by Velvet's beauty. Her creamy skin was flawless, and he could understand why the Emperor had named her Kandra. This priest I was telling you about, my Rose. She looked up at him with her emerald green eyes, then as recognition dawned with disbelief. Uncle Michael? Velvet did his eye. Michael O'Malley held out his arms. Dearest uncle, she flung herself at him. I never thought to see any of my family again. Oh, how wonderful that you are here. She hugged him hard and then stood back to look up at him. You are the answer to a prayer, uncle. Now I can send poor Pansy and her little son home. She has tried to adjust, but she really misses her Dougal, and it isn't all at fair that he not know his son. Sweet child, I've come to take you home. Velvet laughed merrily. No, Uncle Michael, I am not returning to England. When you tell my parents how happy I am, they will understand, and I know that my lord husband will allow them to come visit me here at Lahore or my palace Kashmir. They must see their granddaughter. Pansy, Pansy, come quickly. Another young woman hurried into the room, and Michael vaguely thought that she resembled Skye's Daisy. Yes, my lady. Pansy, this is my uncle Michael Akine, the Bishop of Macdonald. He's going to take you and little Doogie home. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, my lady, I can't leave you. Yes, you can. Oh, Pansy, you're not like me, widowed and beginning a new life. Dougal is alive, and you both have the right to your happiness. Little Dougie has a right to know his father. You have tried for my sake, I know, but you are not happy here. I want you to go home with Uncle Michael. Oh, my lady, she's Daisy's daughter, Velvet said to her uncle. She is loyal to me as her mother is to my mother. It will pain me to part with her, but it's for her own good. Her little body does not tolerate well the heat of our summer. Again, she's going off. Bing, 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 bing. 12 twice in less than 20 minutes. Ah! So then he explains to her that Alexander is very much alive. He was only wounded, but in the excitement that followed, his injury was what someone was heard to say he was dead, and your brother Patrick, without verifying the facts, rushed to tell you that you had become a widow. And Velvet's like, no, he's dead, he's dead. And Michael's like, no, he's alive. So she leaves Yasmin with her father, and she goes back to Queens Malvern, and they see Skye and Adam, and they spend some time there. Dougal gets to know his son, and then they leave for Scotland, and there's some issues in Scotland involving the King of Scotland and Francis Stuart Hepburn. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that. And the mistress, Alana, is still there, and she has given birth to a daughter, but she's also very promiscuous. She's sleeping with several different men at this time. And Alex's brother is very, very jealous, and he wants his brother's money. He's been stealing his animals, his cows, his cattle, his stock. And then he learns of a way to set his brother up for treason, so that when his brother is hanged, he will gain his brother's estates, his lands, and everything. And he makes the plan with some friends, and while they're doing the thing with the Alex, and Alex goes away for a few days to help Francis with something, and they kidnap Velvet, and Velvet, learning of all their plans, gets away and ends up in France with Pansy, and it's a whole story from there. It's a really good book. I don't want to spoil too much of the ending for you. We've talked about it extensively. At least this is the last really, really big one. Like I said, it took me 3 days to read this, and I hope you are still here. I hope you stuck with me through this entire book because I really enjoyed it. And we'll be here for a much smaller book, Love Lost Found. But I think, no, she doesn't. She's not. I'm pretty sure she lasts till book 7. But this is all through Skye's life. These are all Skye's relatives. We are watching her grow old, and she gathers her children and still fights for her children. It's a really awesome series. And like I'm telling you, Claire Beecham Randall Fraser can't hold a candle to Skye O'Malley. She really can't. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.